Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pretty big day here in the Snodgrass household. It is July 16, and my daughter turned 16. It was just funny. When I woke her up this morning, I remembered back to the day that kid was born, and I had so much nervous energy. She was my first that I went to the garage and built her a shelf. That's what I did. And we still have this shelf, and my wife's like, "You need to chill out." And I'm like, "I don't know what's happening," but we had her. She's amazing. She's going to get her license in a little bit, so I got to crank. We got to get this video done so we can get to the DMV. I can't wait to have her driving around. She's a smart kid. She works hard, good grades, and it's kind of funny. A lot of her people she goes to school with don't have licenses, even though they're 16, 17, 18. But my daughter's like, no, we're going in the morning. She actually asked us to wake her up loudly with music. Her choices were the Beatles, the birthday song, or the Beep Beep song for, you know what I'm talking about, or the Tom Cochrane Life is a Highway. So we chose the Life is a Highway, blasted it to wake her up this morning. She's beyond excited. She's got her makeup on for her picture, and so I'm a pretty proud dad today. So sorry, just got to share some personal stuff with you guys every once in a while. All right, weather. Take a look at this map. How you've been staring at it now for 45 seconds. This is the big story we're on right now. All right, so we're going to watch a pretty large ridge move into the central United States over the next couple of weeks, and it is giving us a stronger and stronger drier signal. I downplayed this on Monday, and I shouldn't have, because it's looking to be pretty sizable. There's some upstream blocking in the Pacific, and the Bermuda High is just so massive right now. But we're going to watch a ridge build in from the east. Underneath it, we're going to sneak a tropical system. Could get named. It'd be named Dexter. I'll tell you more about that in a second. And then we have this corridor, which Matt yesterday did a great job kind of explaining the ridge riding storm capability over this. Predictability is going to be terrible. We're not going to be able to the storms are going to be here at this time, but we just know this corridor is going to open up for a lot of strong to severe storms. If you are south of this, it's going to get very hot. And I just want to make that case as we go through this upcoming pattern. All right, bigger picture overall is that we start off the pattern with blocking up the Pacific, so there's the high over the pair of lows. We're going to bring through a trough that's going to go into the western U.S. We'll take a look at the temperatures here in a few minutes. But these troughs are what's going to initiate storms running over the top while this ridge slides into this position. And that's going to be our story. That's where we're going to take this forecast. And as that ridge moves over, just take a look at what the temperatures are expected to do. This is just one example of them. The National Weather Service yesterday just started to put out these risk maps saying, hey, if you're inside this area, the 23rd through the 29th, we're going to start to see the risk of hazardous temperatures, and then we're going to watch the South Central Plains very, very carefully. Now, along the Gulf Coast, of course, we're going to be keeping a close eye on this potential tropical system. The National Hurricane Center, let's see if they've got an update on it. Yeah, 7:36 a.m. update. That's East Coast time. They now got it at a 40% chance of developing. Like I said, should it get there, its name would be Dexter. Models have been all over the place. That's why we've been very cautious about thinking what it could do. But if we just kind of take a look at where it could go, it is going to move from Florida, where we've seen some big storms lately, to the east, and eventually get over here into parts of southern Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. We'll look at those rainfall totals in just a few seconds, but I'm not anticipating this being a big event other than the rainfall. And locally, it's going to put down some heavy rain. And in parts of Louisiana, we've been dry lately, so we need to get some moisture into this part of the state. If I just zoom in on that, this is what we're looking at so far. This is the WPC forecast. And you can see if you miss out on this as it comes to like parts of central Georgia or coming to Arkansas, Oklahoma, or Texas, this is kind of our only southern event we have, save, of course, the daily pop-up storms that can hit the southeast at any time, which the models don't do a good job at forecasting. But there could be 4, 5, 6 inches of rain in this, which means the flash flooding potential, which Matt and I have been going back and forth about, remains high now with a tropical system, not just these thunderstorms racing over the top. So what are we looking at today about 6 a.m.? We still have some air quality issues. We have several spots around the country that are dealing with high heat. As you can see, just a few areas where we already have the heat watches out. And you will just see throughout the day, flash flooding and flood watches that are going to go up here. I want to talk about what's going on in the Southwest. You've probably watched in the news some of the wildfire activity sparked by lightning down here in Arizona near the Grand Canyon. It's hard to see some of the smoke from those fires, just given the cloud cover here. But I want to point out as we get later in the day, the more oblique angle at which the sun strikes the atmosphere allows better reflection for our satellites to see that smoke and air quality issue. And outside of some of these big storms, which you can see, like we'll talk more about this one in parts of the Dakotas and Nebraska, We had several wildfires cranking up in parts of the Southwest. You can see one here in Nevada, some in Northern California. I was interested as I watched this morning, and that right there, I didn't know if I was looking at some pyrocumulus from this view, but I zoomed in and had a closer look and watched this. So there are some wildfires in Northern California, but there was a storm that just popped up here, induced by the mountains. See, look at the clouds just building on the mountains here, and then it erupted, but it completely abandoned its updraft. Do you see that? So the storm pops, and then it just leaves this anvil out just to fight for its own in the upper atmosphere while the storm beneath it dies or stays there. So the updraft stays there. It doesn't move with the shear in the atmosphere. So really impressive. By the way, one thing we've watched all summer basically is the marine stratocumulus layer you see over here has been widespread and prolific. And that's part of the reason why we've seen such cold water off the coast, yet we're not getting the typical results of that, at least up to this point in summer with, the heat in the midsection of the country. But it has kept the California coast very, very cool throughout this entire summer time frame. Now, since we mentioned that smoke, I do want to show you the 48-hour forecast of that smoke. And this is vertically integrated smoke content, and we are expecting quite a bit of it to be throughout the western United States, but to be drawn through the rest of the country as we go forward here. We still have some remnant Canadian wildfire smoke as well. So that brings me to kind of that national picture. And just yesterday, take a look at the highly local but deep storm activity we saw that moved through parts of the Mid-South into the Ohio Valley. We also had this down here in parts of the Mid-Atlantic through the Southeast, just locally, powerful storms putting out some heavy rain. Much bigger storms, hail producers in the last couple of days, and some strong straight line winds that have come out of the northern plains and down into parts of Nebraska. Same thing for parts of northern Minnesota, Wisconsin. And these storms have packed quite a punch as they've come through. Storm reports from yesterday just look something like this, and it continues with 2025 being one of the most active years in history with respect to severe weather. We're not done yet. We still have quite a bit more risk of this coming forward, but I wanted to show you what these storms are doing. Now, I'm pretty pumped, not just about my daughter's birthday, but I worked on some new mapping capabilities yesterday and had a little bit of a breakthrough, and I'm going to be redesigning a lot of my maps. And what you're going to have is the ability to hover. So when you get to a spot, like, well, how much rain did this get? You're going to be able to hover over it and get the information. And I can do that without a tile server. Tile servers are a massive pain in the butt to maintain and build, and I'm getting away from it. So I'm pretty excited to do that. You'll have much better mapping coming soon. And I also reduced the map size while increasing quality, which means they're going to load faster on poor internet connections. So working on agweather.com to make it a better site. All right, that's our rainfall. We have the sagging front that's helped with the precipitation that's run from parts of Alberta through Montana, the Dakotas. A lot of rain in this area. We've had a hole that needs filled in places here, especially into northern Illinois, despite the flooding in Chicago Matt mentioned a couple of days ago. But northern Indiana, parts of southern Michigan have to fill in here. We have pockets of very dry weather in central Kansas overall that we need to see storms, but I don't have a lot of good news there. And then, of course, we're watching this monsoonal circulation begin to build into the southwest. So we need to keep an eye daily on these storms. This is, haven't looked at this in a while, but this is this morning's lightning. So just as the sun was rising across the midsection of the country, we're keeping an eye on the storms that are really kind of out ahead of what could be Dexter here. Some storms moving through the central Corn Belt, some in the Mid-South here as well. And as we work our way forward with all of this, we're going to have to just watch these daily storm events. So just take a look at the scattered nature of some of the storms that were in the heat and humidity here. Locally very heavy. Just to give you an example, where our innovation farm is just south of Champaign, where I work every day, we had multiple storms roll through, heavy rain. And then I drive 20 minutes to go home, and my backyard picked up nothing. And that's going to be the way these storms deliver their rainfall. But you can see the main topic we've gotten into, right? As we get into this mid to late July timeframe, storm structure, when they come through, will be more linear when we get the big risks. And can you see the squall line nature, the bow echo nature of these storms that came out of the plains and are now moving through, this side of the Corn Belt? That is what I'm going to be on the lookout for. I'm quite concerned about the straight line wind damage that will be associated with this. And we just saw it yesterday. You saw the map a moment ago as to where those stronger winds had come through. So with all that being said, let's take a look at where we're expecting the strongest severe weather today and actually the next 2 days after that. We're going to watch the very western and high plains and also this part of the Midwest. So Iowa, coming out of Iowa, but into Wisconsin, Illinois, maybe northwestern Indiana, and over into Michigan. Watch it today, all right? We do have the risk of very heavy rainfall with these storms. We've been discussing at length how much just juice is loaded in the atmosphere that is getting both recycled and replenished, and these storms are putting down heavy rainfall, so flash flooding will be a problem. We are concerned later this week, so this is Wednesday, Thursday into Friday when we expect whatever this tropical system becomes to be delivering heavy rainfall. And that is the primary threat down here along the Gulf Coast with this system. So please understand that I think that is where we're going to see our biggest problems is with heavy rainfall. But severe weather every day. We're going to see pockets of very, very strong storms. All right, let's go ahead and have a look now at the new high-resolution rapid refresh model just to get some sense on where this is going. Let's get us queued up to right about now. So as we play it forward, again, we're going to watch later today. See the storms that just roll through Wisconsin, northern Illinois, into Michigan. You can see it draped back to a front that connects to the Front Range and throughout the Intermountain West, storms. We're going to continue to see these storms popping. Be some heavy rain over here into parts of Pennsylvania. One of our watchers, Robbie, you got storms coming into your area, so make sure that you're paying close attention to this and are capable of finding good shelter with how heavy some of these rains are going to be. And then we're going to watch down here, the leading edge of this system that's coming through that could be potentially delivering very heavy rainfall along the Gulf Coast over toward parts of Louisiana. We got to bring this back to the story of what happens when you bring in the heat and you bring in the humidity. It destabilizes the atmosphere. And if when I say destabilize the atmosphere, that doesn't make a lot of sense to you, it's basically understanding density. So at the surface, when you crank up the afternoon temperatures and then you just dump humidity into it, what happens is you make less dense air masses and they rise. And as they rise into cooler air above, which helps them to rise even faster. So when we talk about stability, it's the comparison to a parcel, that's what we call it, parcel of rising air, and comparing it to the surrounding environment. It's like a bubble. And the greater the temperature difference, the bigger the value of CAPE, which is what we play out here. Now, as you play this forward, I'm just look at it. We're not really trying to pick out any individual event, but do you take note of how much instability is building into the atmosphere through the central U.S., into the upper Midwest, into the Corn Belt, where we're even going off my color bar. Now, you have to be careful. You can have a massively destabilized atmosphere that produces no storms. Now, we don't expect that, of course, but just make sure that you don't go, holy cow, we're at 7,000 CAPE on next Tuesday night. Iowa's going to explode. No, that's not what happens here. It's just saying that the environment is ready. You've got to have four things to make severe weather. The instability is one. And part of the instability is the second ingredient, which is plenty of moisture coming from the surface. The third thing is you got to have a trigger. You got to have a front. You have to have an outflow boundary. You have to have something to force air to rise. And the fourth thing is you've got to have shear. That'll get you the severe weather, the severe storms. And this time of year, we have very, very little shear, but it's the type of shear, this unidirectional shear, that can make these big storms turn out to give us squall lines. And that's what we're concerned about. So when I see the atmosphere repeatedly tossing very destabilized air into this region, it just has us concerned about the risk of straight line wind damage as we go forward over the next 10 to 15 days. Now, just thinking about this, one thing to point out, I keep saying that you can destabilize the air, letting it rise by pumping in humidity. This is interesting. If you sit down and look at it, humid air at the same temperature as dry air. So let's say it's 90 degrees, but you've got a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture in the air versus 90 degrees and it's very dry. You get less dense air. So the less dense air is the one that's actually loaded with moisture. Isn't that kind of weird to think about? And that's because the density of water is not liquid water, but water vapor. The molecular weight of a water molecule is less than nitrogen or oxygen. So it tends to decrease the density, allowing air to rise. If it was the other way around, by the way, we would never, ever get rain. It's kind of weird to say, but that's how it works. What I don't like about this is where there is not the moisture, which is in here, that is where we're going to tend to struggle with the ability to get anything out of the atmosphere. And I'm going to tell you more about that in a second here. Now, I'm going to switch over to Weatherbell for this because I don't make this map. I think I will have the capability to do it now with the resources that I've unlocked. But this is just a rolling 24-hour window of total accumulated precipitation. And I do this just to get a sense of the way the atmosphere is flowing. And it just shows us over these next, 10 to 15 days where the atmosphere is going to be sending its motion. So did you notice it? It's kind of like doing this with monsoonal storms here. We have the tropical event coming in through there. And that's our setup. And that is well described. We've been talking about this for weeks with respect to the Bermuda High, Pacific High, the blocking, the northwest flow. It's all there. But you have to look at it other ways. So over the next 10 days, here's the probability at grabbing at least an inch. And I know a new model run came in. Yeah, darn it. So let me go back and flip you over to the old one and take you out 10 days. That's the chance at 2 inches. And there's going to be some spots that are really wet. Those are the chances of 4. But take note, we have a non-zero chance in through here of 4 inches of rain in the next 10 days. Now on the flip side of this, the southern plains, getting over to parts of the Mid-South like Arkansas. I can hear my daughter upstairs getting ready to go. So I gotta finish this one. This is a major concern. And the reason it's such a big concern is if you look at the evaporative rates, just over the next 7 days, I haven't even included week 2, we're making a sizable flip in this region where these evaporation rates are now creeping into the mid 2-inch range over the next 7 days. And as I show you the heat that's going to build into the midsection of the country and into week 2, these numbers are going to get even higher. Now, what you see out west is very common, like the Columbia Basin, the Snake River Valley, the Central Valley of California, the desert Southwest. These numbers are not alarming. What is alarming is right in through here. So this is a new system I'm working on. I'm going to release this all to you on AgWeather very soon. This is just the prototype. But I went in here to Lawton, I think is how you say it. So you're right into this part of Oklahoma, excuse me. I have a good friend lives near here named Dallas. Great name for living in Oklahoma, in my opinion. But Dallas, take a look. Our temperatures every day just cranking. You're in the low 100s. And what I don't like about this is if you look at your precipitation forecasts, that's the European model next 15 days. That's the GFS, a little bit here. The artificial intelligence and the national blended models, which only goes out 10 days. It's got nothing in this area. And the concern is, let me look at this. Let me take you down to the bottom. We've been so wet back in April and then definitely at the end of April, beginning of May. And what I don't like is the flat line you're going to have on your precip. And so you can be in a situation where on the year we're 10 inches above average. That's what this is. And now we go into drought. And that's just a big concern for this region going forward. The culprit is this ridge that slides in from the southeast. Okay, so here it is. This is by midweek next week, and it just lives over the southern plains. Some of the models take this up to a 600 decameter ridge. That would put you up there pretty high statistically in terms of how big a ridge can be in the middle of summer. And what we start to get concerned about is what that does to the precipitation pattern. Like, for example, week 2 continues to be a lot drier down here while the storms roll over the edge. But what it's going to do to temperatures. Now, I tweeted this out yesterday because I think it's been kind of an understated fact that over the last month, this region in particular has seen incredibly hot overnight low temperatures. Now, it's not as though we've had a couple of nights where it's just like 80 or 85 overnight, but consistently hotter than normal has made, for example, the state of Ohio. If you look back from June 15 to July 15, it is the warmest for that stretch of days for the overnight lows going back to 1893. And don't forget, Ohio started off cold and very wet and then was scorched with temperatures at the end of June. And now we can see the overnight lows have been problematic as well. We got to keep an eye on these overnight lows because this is the critical time period where the crops that are grown in the Midwest need to see cooler weather. What do we need? We honestly need very low 70s or 60s or below. So just this morning, when they're in the low 70s, that's borderline too warm. Now, there's a cold front. We talked about it. That's coming through. There it is. That's Thursday to Friday. There's the trough. That is beyond welcome here. We're going to be hot in the southeast. We're going to be hot in the west. But watch these minimum temperatures Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. See them coming back up? And the worry is that we see maybe by the middle of next week, not just very, very warm overnight lows, but with that humidity, you're compounding that into very high apparent temperatures. So this is just a look at the whole country. Like I said, we are going to avoid it here, but the heat coming in here is oppressive, is really what I should say. And I'm just going to take a look at my home state of Illinois. Let's go in there. And this is the heat index values just by next Wednesday. So we're looking at well over 100 for heat index. Remember, this is including the humidity. So when we start to see that, what are the probabilities of the actual temperature, not just the max temperature above 100? So here we are starting next Tuesday night and going through the middle and end of next week. Every afternoon, this is the probability of going over 100. And it's going to be very, very hot in the southern plains, high evaporation rates, and the risk here is going to be with rapid onset of drought. And we just can't ignore that. Bigger picture, I mean, watch the difference between the northern plains of Canadian Prairie and the rest of the country. Because there's that cold air in California we talked about. See the colder air here, but very hot to the south. As I move this out today, 5 through 10, I mean, if you're in Calgary, over to Saskatoon, down here to most of Montana, yeah, when you've got this trough in place, we're going to be cool. West Coast is going to cool back down, but a lot of heat is building into the central United States. And that's out there day 5 through 10, which is the 21st through the 21st, through the 26th. And we finish the month like this. And that heat that's coming in is becoming a major concern overall for, I think, the crop, which right now I showed you on Monday is the best looking crop in the Midwest that we've ever had in terms of NDVI. That's purely just in terms of NDVI. So a lot of heat going on here. And remember, my excitement in my voice has nothing to do with the terrible forecast. And I'm just pumped for my kid today. All right, next, do want to mention this. My Uncle John texted me yesterday. He goes, hey, you haven't talked about momentum in a while. And what the story was is as the momentum fell, we knew that there'd be a bit of a lag in the heat, which is why the mid to late July timeframe was going to be a discussion. Momentum has tried to come back up, Uncle John, but I think it's coming up mainly because in the southern hemisphere, this is backed off. We still have our low momentum state in the northern hemisphere. And we've even lost some of the jet stream speed that's already been displaced pretty far to the north, which means the risk seems to be back on in terms of more prolonged, hotter, drier weather. That's not to say it's going to be every day, but there's just greater risk of it, if that makes any sense. And so much of that, I think, can be attributed to maps like this. Over the last several weeks, we have seen this part of the North Pacific build in lots and lots of heat. Now, there's cloud cover induced cooling here. There's that remnant La Nina-like behavior that's going on, and that's going to influence the rest of our summer and fall, which we're trying to build a narrative around. But when I look at it, let me take you back up here. Look at the temperature difference just over the last 7 days, building in this heat into this area. And it's displacing the jet stream north. That's one of the main factors that this is going to do. And that's just going to put late summer heat risk a bit higher in the midsection of the United States should this continue. The other component, which Matt did an excellent job explaining yesterday, which I'm going to reiterate as I wrap this one up, is that there is some indication, and he showed it to you in the height potentials, the velocity potentials, that we're going to get this MJO movement. And many of us are, in meteorology, concerned, are we going to leave this side of our phase diagram and maybe come over here? And we have a lot of reason to worry about that because of this. If you stay, let's just review this. If you stay on this side, phase 5 and 6, historically, we don't tend to build in big ridges like exactly where the one's coming in now. Okay, you tend to get, when you look at this regression map, we tend to have troughs here. There tend to be more ridges there. If we move through this or move out of this phase quickly and come back into like phases 1 and 2, it's the complete opposite. We tend to trough here and ridge there. And if that is the case, if we do end up moving the MJO back into this phase, well, then there is a story about risk into not only July, but into August of having a stagnant long wave pattern. And where that ridge placement is going to be is going to largely be determined by just the momentum, the flow, and where the standing wave develops. If we start talking about a blocked pattern in the Pacific or in the Atlantic, maybe where the Bermuda High finally drifts away like the European model's been calling for months, which it hasn't happened yet, then I think there's a story that we can't ignore for the second half of this growing season. I'm going to show it to you anyway. I've made a case earlier this week that this model is just not been on, but we're going to look at it. This is its August forecast for precipitation. And I see a few things. Let's start outside the U.S. Wetter Manchurian Plain, North China Plain, wetter Southeast Asia. Interesting monsoonal flow through India, according to the model, but Indonesia, wet. Australia, they need this. Let's break this drought in winter and get moisture in place. They've gone back over drier throughout Central Europe, over to Ukraine, and even parts of Russia. Now, we've not seen that expansive of a drought build in June and early July, but something to consider. In South America, now we're way, way, way ahead of any sort of monsoonal signal, but they're not dry here. But it's the middle of the dry season, so just ignore that. And then you come into the U.S., and where is it planted, the driest conditions? Let's go look at it. Mid part of the country. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to show you this, and I don't have any trust or faith in it. I need to see over the next 2 weeks where the ridge goes. And if it moves, and or stays in the southeast, central U.S., then we've got a story. Until then, I don't know. And don't forget, the tropics can outdo this any day of the week. You can all of a sudden develop something in the Gulf that just races into the southern plains or into the southeast, and it changes this precip map, and this model had no idea it was coming. Okay, we're off. Take care, everybody.